Foreman, I think that's a good point. We have a job to do. Let's do it. 11. If the gentlemen don't mind, I'm going to close the window. Gets up, does so, then apologetically as he moves back to the table, it was blowing on my neck. 10 blows his nose fiercely as he gets down from back of the chair and sits again. 7. If you don't mind, I'd like to have the window open. 11. But it was blowing on me. 7. Don't you want a little air? It's summer. It's hot. 11. I was very uncomfortable. 7. There are 12 of us in this room. It's the only window. If you don't mind. 11. I have some rights too. 7. So do the rest of us. 4 to 11. Couldn't you trade chairs with someone at the other end of the table? 11. All right, I'll open the window if someone would trade. Goes to window and opens it. 2 gets up and goes to 11's chair, near right end of table. 2, motioning, take my chair. 11, thank you. Goes to 2's chair near left end of the table. Foreman, shall we get back to the case? 3, yeah, let's. 12, I may have an idea here. I'm just thinking out loud now, but it seems to me that it's up to us to convince this gentleman, motioning towards 8, that we're right and he's wrong. Maybe if we each talk for a minute or two, try it on for size. Foreman, that sounds fair enough. 4, very fair. Foreman, supposing we go once around the table. 7, okay, let's start it off. Foreman, right to 2. We'll start with you. 2, timidly. Oh, well, there's a long pause. I just think he's guilty. I thought it was obvious. 8, in what way was it obvious? 2, I mean that nobody proved otherwise. 8, quietly. Nobody has to prove otherwise. Innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. The defendant doesn't have to open his mouth. That's in the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment. You've heard of it. 4, everyone has. 2, flustered. Well, sure, I've heard of it. I know what it is. What I meant, well, anyway, I think he's guilty. 8, looking at 2, shaking his head slowly. No reasons, just guilty. There's a life at stake here. 3, okay, let's get to the facts. Number 1, let's take the old man who lived on the second floor, right underneath the room where the murder took place. At 10 minutes after 12, on the night of the killing, he heard loud noises in the upstairs apartment. He said it sounded like a fight. Then he heard the kid say to his father, I'm going to kill you. A second later, he heard a body falling, and he ran to the door of his apartment, looked out, saw the kid running downstairs and out of the house. Then he called the police. They found the father with a knife in his chest. Foreman. And the coroner fixed the time of death at around midnight. 3, right. Now what else do you want? 8, it doesn't seem to fit. 4, the boy's entire story is flimsy. He claims he was at a movie. That's a little ridiculous, isn't it? He couldn't even remember what picture he saw. 3, that's right. Did you hear that? To 4, you're absolutely right. 5, he didn't have any ticket stub. 8, who keeps a ticket stub at the movies? 4 to 5, that's true enough. 5, I suppose, but the cashier didn't remember him. 3, and the ticket taker didn't either. 10, look, what about the woman across the street? If her testimony don't prove it, then nothing does. 12, that's right. She saw the killing, didn't she? Foreman, rapping on the table. Let's go in order. 10, loudly. Just a minute. Here's a woman who's lying in bed and can't sleep. It's hot, Gets up and begins to walk around at left stage, blowing his nose and talking. Anyway, she wakes up and she looks out the window, and right across the street, she sees the kid stick the knife into his father. 8. How can she really be sure it was the kid when she saw it through the window of a passing elevated train? 10. Pausing down left. She's known the kid all his life. His window's right opposite hers, across the L tracks, and she swore she saw him do it. 8. I heard her swear to it. 10. Okay. And they proved in court that you can look through the window of a passing L train at night and see what's happening on the other side. They proved it. 8. Weren't you telling us just a minute or two ago that you can't trust them? That you can't believe them? 10. Coldly. So? 8. But I'd like to ask you something. How come you believed her? She's one of them too, isn't she? 10 crosses up to 8. 10. You're a pretty smart fellow, aren't you? Foreman, rising. Now take it easy. 3 gets up and goes to 10. 3. Come on, sit down. Leads 10 back to his seat. What are you letting him get you all upset for? Relax. 10 and 3 sit down. 4. Gentlemen, they did take us out to the woman's room, and we looked through the window of a passing L train to 8. Didn't we? 8. Yes, nods. We did. 4. And weren't you able to see what happened on the other side? 8. I didn't see as well as they told me I would see, but I did see what happened on the other side. 10. Snapping at 8. You see? Do you see? Foreman, sitting again. Let's calm down. To 5. It's your turn. 5. I'll pass it. Foreman, that's your privilege. To 6. How about you? 6. Slowly. I don't know. I started to be convinced, with the testimony from those people across the hall. Didn't they say something about an argument between the father and the boy around 7 o'clock that night? I mean, I can be wrong. 11. I think it was 8 o'clock. Not 7. 8. That's right, 8 o'clock. 4. They heard the father hit the boy twice and then saw the boy walk angrily out of the house. 6. Right. 8. What does that prove? 6. Well, it doesn't exactly prove anything. It's just part of the picture. I didn't say it proved anything. Foreman, anything else? 6. No. Rises, goes to the water cooler for a drink, and then sits again. 7. I don't know. Most of it's been said already. We can talk all day about this thing, but I think we're wasting our time. 8. I don't. 4. Neither do I. Go on. 7. Look at the kid's record. He stole a car. He's been arrested for mugging. I think they said he stabbed somebody in the arm. 4. They did. 7. He was picked up for knife fighting at 15. He was in reform school. 3. And they sent him to reform school for stabbing someone. 7. With sarcasm, he's a real fine boy. 8. Ever since he was 5 years old, his father beat him up regularly. He used his fists. 7. So would I on a kid like that. 3. You're right. It's the kids, the way they are, They don't listen. Bitterly. I've got a kid. When he was 8 years old, he ran away from a fight. I saw him. I was so ashamed. I told him right out, I'm going to make a man out of you, or I'm going to bust you up into little pieces trying. When he was 15, he hit me in the face. He's big, I haven't seen him in 3 years. Rotten kid. I hate tough kids. You work your heart out. Pauses. All right, let's get on with it. Gets up and goes to window, very embarrassed. 4. We're missing the point here. This boy, let's say he is a product of a filthy neighborhood and broken home. We can't help that. We're not here to go into the reasons why slums are breeding grounds for criminals. They are. I know it. So do you. The children who come out of slum backgrounds are potential menaces to society. 10. You said it there. I don't want any part of them. Believe me. There's a dead silence for a moment, and then 5 speaks, haltingly. I've lived in a slum all my life. 10. Now wait a second. 5. I used to play in a backyard that was filled with garbage. Maybe it still smells on me. Foreman. Now, let's be reasonable. There's nothing personal. 5. Rising, slamming his hand down on the table. There is something personal. Then he catches himself, and seeing everyone looking at him, sits down, fists clenched. 3. Turning from window. Come on now. He didn't mean you, feller. Let's not be so sensitive. There's a long pause. 8. Breaking silence. Who did he mean? 11. I can understand this sensitivity. Foreman. Now let's stop the bickering. 12. We're wasting time. Foreman to 8. It's your turn. 8. All right. I had a peculiar feeling about this trial. Somehow I felt that the defense counsel never really conducted a thorough cross-examination. Too many questions were left unasked. 4. While it doesn't change my opinion about the guilt of the kid, still, I agree with you that the defense counsel was bad. 3. So, crosses back to table and sits. 8. This is a point. 3. What about facts? 8. So many questions were never answered. 3. Annoyed. What about the questions that were answered? For instance, let's talk about that cute little switch knife. You know, the one that fine, upright kid admitted buying. 8. All right, let's talk about it. Let's get it in here. Let's look at it. I'd like to see it again. Mr. Foreman? Foreman looks at him questioningly and then gets up and goes to door left. During the following dialogue, the foreman knocks, the guard unlocks the door and comes in left. The foreman whispers to him. The guard nods and leaves, locking the door. The foreman returns to his seat. 3. We all know what it looks like. I don't see why we have to look at it again. To 4. What do you think? 4. The gentleman has a right to see exhibits and evidence. 3. Shrugging. Okay with me. 4 to 8. This knife is a pretty strong piece of evidence. Don't you agree? 8. I do. 4. Now let's get the sequence of events right as they relate to the switch knife. 12. The boy admits going out of his house at 8 o'clock after being slapped by his father. 8. Or punched. 4. Or punched. Gets up and begins to pace at right stage, moving direct right to upper right and back again. He went to a neighborhood store and bought a switch knife. The storekeeper was arrested the following day when he admitted selling it to the boy. 3. I think everyone agrees that it's an unusual knife. Pretty hard to forget something like that. 4. The storekeeper identified the knife and said it was the only one of its kind he had in stock. Why did the boy get it? 7, sarcastically. As a present for a friend of his, he says. 4, pausing in his pacing. Am I right so far? 8. Right. 3. You bet he's right to all. Now listen to this man. He knows what he's talking about. 4. Standing at right stage. Next, the boy claims that on the way home, the knife must have fallen through a hole in his coat pocket, that he never saw it again. Now there's the story, gentlemen. You know what actually happened. The boy took the knife home and a few hours later stabbed his father with it and even remembered to wipe off the fingerprints. The door left opens and the guard walks in with an oddly designed knife with a tag on it. 4 crosses left and takes the knife from him. The guard goes out left, closing and locking the door. 4 at left center, holding up knife. Everyone connected with the case identified this knife. Now, are you trying to tell me that someone picked it up off the street and went up to the boy's house and stabbed his father with it just to be amusing? 8. No. I'm saying that it's possible that the boy lost the knife and that someone else stabbed his father with a similar knife. It's possible. 4 flips knife open and jams it into the wall just downstage of door left. 4, standing back to allow others to see, take a look at that knife. It's a very strange knife. I've never seen one like it before in my life. Neither had the storekeeper who sold it to him. 8 reaches casually into his pocket and withdraws an object. No one notices him. He stands up. Aren't you trying to make us accept a pretty incredible coincidence? 8, moving toward 4. I'm not trying to make anyone accept it. I'm just saying it's possible. 3, rising, shouting, and I'm saying it's not possible. 8, swiftly flicks open blade of a switch knife, jams it into the wall next to the first knife, and steps back. They are exactly alike. There are several gasps, and everyone stares at the knife. There is a long silence. 3 continues, slowly, amazed. What are you trying to do? 10, loudly. Yeah, what is this? Who do you think you are? A flow of ad-lib conversation bursts forth. 5, look at it. It's the same knife. Foreman, quiet. Let's be quiet. Jurors, quiet down. 3 sits again. 4, where did you get it? 8, I got it in a little junk shop around the corner from the boy's house. It cost $2. 3, now listen to me. 8, turning to him. I'm listening. 3, you pulled a real smart trick here, but you proved absolutely zero. Maybe there are 10 knives like that. So what? 8, maybe there are. 3, the boy lied and you know it. 8, crossing back to his seat, sitting. And maybe he didn't lie. Maybe he did lose the knife and maybe he did go to the movies. Maybe the reason the cashier didn't see him was because he sneaked into the movies. And maybe he was ashamed to say so, looks around. Is there anybody here who didn't sneak into the movies once or twice when they were young? There's a long pause. 11, I didn't. 4, really? Not even once? 11, we didn't have movies. 4, oh, crosses back to his place and sits. 8, maybe he did go to the movies. Maybe he didn't. And he may have lied. To 10, do you think he lied? 10, violently. Now that's a stupid question. Sure, he lied. 8 to 4, do you? 4, you don't have to ask me that. You know my answer. He lied. 8 to 5, do you think he lied? 5 can't answer immediately. He looks around nervously. 5, I don't know. 7, now wait a second. What are you, the guy's lawyer? Listen, there are still 11 of us who think he's guilty. You're alone. What do you think you're going to accomplish? If you want to be stubborn and hang this jury, he'll be tried again and found guilty sure as he's born. 8, you're probably right. 7, so what are you going to do about it? We can be here all night. 9, it's only one night. A man may die. 7, oh, now, come on. 8 to 9, well, yes, that's true. Foreman, I think we ought to get on with it now. 3, right, let's get going here. 10 to 3, how do you like this guy? 3 shrugs and turns to 8. 3, well, what do you say? You're the only one holding up the show. 4 to 8, obviously you don't think the boy is guilty. 8, I have a doubt in my mind. 4, but you haven't really presented anything to us that makes it possible for us to understand your doubt. There's the old man downstairs. He heard it. He heard the kids shriek it out. 3, the woman across the L tracks. She saw it. 7, we know he bought a switch knife that night and we don't know where he really was. At the movies? Foreman, earlier that night, the kid and his father did have a fight. 4, he has been a violent kid all the way, and while that doesn't prove anything, 10, still, you know. 8, standing. I've got a proposition to make. 5 stands and puts his hands on the back of his chair. Several jurors glare at him. He sinks his head down a bit, then sits down. I want to call for a vote. I want you 11 men to vote by secret ballot. I'll abstain. If there are still 11 votes for guilty, I won't stand alone. We'll take it in a guilty verdict right now. 7, okay, let's do it. Foreman, that sounds fair. Is everyone agreed? 4, I certainly am. 12, let's roll it. 11, slowly. Perhaps this is best. 8 walks over to the window and stands there for a moment looking out, then turns as Foreman passes ballot slips down the table to all of them. 8 tenses as jurors begin to write. Then folded ballots are passed back to the foreman. He flips through folded ballots, counts them to be sure he has 11, and then he begins to open them, reading verdict each time. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 3. That's 6. Foreman, please. Fumbles with 1 ballot. 6 guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Pauses for a moment at 10th ballot and then reads, not guilty. 3 slams his hand down hard on the table. 8 starts for table as Foreman reads the final ballot. Guilty. 10, angrily. How do you like that? 7, standing, snarling. Who was it? I think we have a right to know. Looks about. No one moves. Curtain.